for the technical difficulties. You gotta love technology when it works, and when it doesn't work, you gotta hate it. So anyways, here we are. Today's topic, crucial conversations. Thank you for joining us. Please be sure you have your worksheet handy. We will use that. There are 5 questions we're going to be asking today, and the questions are going to relate to your day-to-day responsibilities. How do we apply this to your world? So what is a crucial conversation? Well, those are those conversations you have to have employees, the ones that aren't fun. Those are the ones where someone may not be performing, where they need to perform more effectively. It's one of those conversations that many of you on the webinar today probably don't have because it's uncomfortable. So let's talk about what a crucial conversation is all about, and we're going to get started with, first of all and foremost, some of the elements of what leadership really is. But before we talk about that, let's talk about 2 things: setting clear direction, and as well setting expectations. The direction tells people where to go. The expectations tell people what to achieve. You may spend much of your time telling people what to do. I would say don't do that as much. Yes, you might have to do that in the beginning, but as employees move forward and achieve, you want them to achieve based on what their understanding is of that is, and that's all about your level of expectation setting. Let me see here if I can get this to work. Perfect. Let's talk about the characteristics of a true leader. Here's a list developed by, if anyone's heard of Tom Peters, you probably know who the Tom Peters group is. But here's a list that they've come up with that I truly believe in. These are characteristics of true leaders. I'm not going to talk about every single one of these, but the one I really want to talk about is courageousness, demonstrating courage. Leadership, and any of you who have been on any of my webinars or attended any of my sessions understand that leadership is very, very easy until it's very, very difficult. And oftentimes being courageous is all about doing what is right as a leader, doing what is right for the individual, the organization. So what does that mean? Well, that might mean setting the right example. That might mean giving someone recognition, reward, and even sometimes it is having to hold a difficult conversation, those conversations that are necessary to help people get better, improve. Sometimes it's someone who's doing well and needs to be doing much better, and other times it's about individuals who are not performing at the level that they should. What I want to show you here is a model that we use that will help you understand how to look at your team and your organization. Now, this model, we call it our chaos to high performance model. You can see chaos. The chaos stage is at the bottom. High performance is at the top. It's a continuum of sorts where you can go up and down in these stages. The goal is to perform at the highest level. The only challenge when you get to the highest performing stage is you got to try to stay there. It takes energy because gravity does have a tendency to want to pull you backward or pull you down. So if you think of this model chaos, you'll see all the arrows in the bottom of that venturi. All the arrows are going in many different directions. Chaos, not well aligned, not well focused, not the greatest organization. You'll also see as you go through the venturi that stability stage where it gets narrow. The arrows come together and they start moving in a unified and coordinated direction. Well, that is something where you move someone from stability to high performance. What I want to talk about today, and those crucial conversations relate to where are your employees. You see over in the on the right-hand side of your screen here, under the employee, the EE cylinder there, you'll see I put some X's. That might or could represent where some of your employees are today, depending on how mature your organization is, depending on how well you've coached them, managed them, led them. This is where a distribution could look like, where you have a number of people at the top, close to high performance, and you might have someone at the stability, close to the stability stage, where you can coach them to the next level. However, you can have people below that stability stage. Now, that's not the end of the world. Some people might think, well, if I have those people, I should just get rid of them. I don't suggest just getting rid of them. They're there for a reason. Now, much of that could be a function of your leadership, how well you've coached them, managed them, and helped them achieve. It could be a function of where they are and their attitude, absolutely, but maybe they're just a new employee, someone new to your organization. The challenge we have is down in that area. We don't have a lot of time to spend with those employees down there. They do drain a lot of energy. And the question is, well, how do you deal with it? Well, we call that performance management. Above the stability line, you're coaching, you're delegating and coaching people to higher performance. Below the line, you're having to manage performance. It's that minimum set of performance requirements that employees need to meet to be a valued part of the team. So what I want you to think about here as you go through this process is, well, where is my team in all of this? Where are my employees in all this? Where are we on that chaos to high performance stage? Where do we exist? Where do my employees exist? And it's not a bad way to look at it, because then you can evaluate how well you're doing and what they may need to be doing as you're trying to move them to a greater level. Ideally is getting everyone to the stability stage and above. Your job gets easier, they're performing more effectively, and you're getting better results and better outcomes. What is performance management? Well, performance management is just that. You will hear me say, let's not manage people, let's lead them. But sometimes performance needs to be managed. So you're not necessarily managing the person as much as you're managing their performance. So the first thing that needs to happen is people need to be crystal clear on what their job purpose is. What are their duties? Now, you might think that's straightforward, but you'd be surprised when you ask people, what do you do here? And they give you a job title and not much more. You want to be crystal clear when they walk in the door during that 3 month honeymoon period when people are first starting that onboarding process. Do people have a clear understanding of what their duties are? And we know they do change. We want to be sure people know exactly what is required of them. What are my goals and how can I measure my success? What are those outcomes? It's not the activity we want to measure as much as we want to measure outcomes. Now, activity is important. Those are the leading indicators of success. The performance measures around outcomes are lagging indicators. Was I successful? Still very important. You want to characterize the standards of performance for critical aspects of the position. So, that really is what are the most critical pieces? Where should I be focusing my time? Now, I did highlight a bullet here in blue, and this is to say you need to discuss employee performance, provide feedback. And this is not just once a year. As I've listed here, at least once a quarter. People need feedback. They thrive on feedback. And it's not a matter of a pat on the back. That's not what I mean. What they're looking for is, am I performing the way I should be? Are you pleased with what I'm doing? Am I meeting my expectations? And there are many opportunities, both ad hoc as well as planned moments, to ensure that people are getting the feedback that they need. You want to track performance. You want to have a record of people's performance. And then, of course, you want to be sure that you're working toward higher levels of performance. Obviously, when a person reaches the highest level and they're performing consistently, that's a time to challenge them with greater responsibility. Maybe it's a new project, maybe it's something more difficult, or possibly even a promotion, depending on where your organization is in terms of open positions. But the goal here is to make sure that people have a clear sense of what it means to perform, and you're having regular conversations and providing that feedback that is needed. This is a model that I think is very important. If someone isn't performing, if they're below that stability line, as I mentioned earlier, you need to know your audience. If you're delegating responsibility, if you're assigning them a new role, you want to be sure you know where they are. And this is very important in terms of setting people up for success. And I'm providing this model because sometimes managers will push their employees beyond their what I would call, well beyond their comfort zone, past the learning zone. The learning zone is past where they're comfortable. You do need to challenge them, there's no question. But at the same time, what you need to do is you need to make sure you're not pushing them too far. You don't want to get into the Peter principle where you're promoting them or challenging them beyond their capabilities to a point of failure. So this model is kind of interesting, and it's called the situational leadership model. There are obviously two axes here, the directive behavior. This is your behavior as a leader. This is providing direction. This is telling people what to do. Now, I don't like leaders doing a lot of telling, but at times you'll need to do that. The supportive behavior is supporting individuals, coaching them, letting them come to you, facilitating problem solving, not solving problems, guiding their thinking. So if you look at the model, someone who is new, who is perhaps not at the level they need to be, they're far behind, you're going to be in the directing area. You'll be providing a lot of direction and less support, as I've just defined it. The goal through your, through this model and through a deliberate approach is to move them through coaching, supporting, into delegating, where essentially they are coming to you only when they need you, and you're providing very little directive, meaning telling them what to do. And that's really the ideal here. So you have to know your audience. Where are they when you're challenging them? How far can you take them? What I'd like to do now, and this is where your worksheet's going to come into play, is I'd like you to think about how this applies to you. Who needs your support? So, this could be, I don't know how many people you have reporting to you. It could be 1, it could be 10. Hopefully it's not more than 10. And what I'd like you to do is think about an individual or two who needs your support. And on item 1 here, it says identify 1 or 2 employees who are not performing to your satisfaction and are in need of your support. Now, your satisfaction could be as simple as they're below that stability line, they're not performing to the minimum performance requirements, or there's someone who's performing well, but you really want to challenge them. So take a moment, write down a couple names of people who need your support. And I'm going to fast forward just a hair here, and item 2 says for each employee listed, what areas of performance require attention? What support do they need from you? What area do they need to work on? So take a moment, do that. I'll give you about a minute or 2 to do this because there's a couple items, and then we'll come back. Go ahead. Couple more seconds. If you could just get those jotted down, we'll be able to move forward. And something to think about here as you've listed the people who need your support, the people who you're going to work with, in the areas where they need to work on. It's one of those things where they need to see the benefit. So in part of working with them on these particular areas of skill or competency, the conversation you're going to have, and we'll get into how to have the conversation in a few moments, but the conversation you're going to have, there needs to be, you need to work toward them seeing the benefit, because if people don't see the benefit to themselves in working on a particular skill or capability, they're not going to work on it, and that's just a human nature thing. There's got to be some level of buy-in or motivation for the individual to want to take this on. So you should have a 1 or 2 people listed. You should have an area of performance you want them to work on and a related skill. This is, skills will drive performance. So these are the things we're going to look at. Now let's just talk about key moments. Key moments are those things in life that present you with a challenge. It could be as simple as someone cutting you off on the highway, to someone holding the door for you, or your opportunity to hold the door for someone else. In a business environment, it could be a heated moment during a meeting. It could be a major client issue is presented to you, or you get a call from an irate customer. You name it, these are key moments. And your capability as a leader are measured through those key moments more than anything else. When things are going well, your performance is not being ignored, but it's given. Things should be going well. You should be performing well when things are going well. It's when you're challenged. It's when you come up against a moment that is difficult. And these key moments oftentimes come with employees. Poor performance, poor behavior, a situation, a conflict. So I present key moments as something very, very important, and how you handle those key moments and how you handle your employees is critical. How your employees see you usually are through these key moments. So I want you to think about those and how those will shape how people see you and how people evaluate you as a leader. So there's three ways to address key moments. These are pretty fundamental. Okay, you can avoid it, you can certainly do it poorly, and then you can do it effectively. And now I'm hoping you choose the one to the right, do it effectively. Sometimes doing it poorly is not a function of you being a bad person. I know, I'm pretty sure everyone online is not a bad person. It's just a function of I don't know how to do it, or perhaps my emotions get in the way. The pathway that most people pick is avoiding it, because most people don't like conflict. Addressing poor performance or trying to help somebody with their performance can feel like a moment of conflict or confrontation. Most people don't like it because it requires emotional energy, which will drain you. We know at the end of the day, when we've had a tough emotional day, you're tired, you're worn out. You might go home, put up your feet, take a nap. Some people might grab a glass of wine, whatever the case is. You know you've had a long day when you've had an emotionally draining day. That's why most people avoid situations. Avoiding situations does nothing. The situation doesn't go away. The employee doesn't automatically get better just because you avoid it. Doing it poorly doesn't help either. Let's talk about a way to do it effectively. There's two types of feedback. There's informal feedback and what I would consider formal feedback. Let's talk about each one of those. Informal feedback. It can be quick. It can be a hallway discussion. But what it is, it's an opportunity to point something out. It doesn't have to be negative or constructive. It can be positive. If anyone's learned anything in life about coaching people, coaching is mostly about providing feedback on what people are doing well. It does require the performance feedback, the performance management piece, but the more you encourage people to repeat the behavior you want and repeat the performance you want, the more they'll do it. So I don't want you to think about all this feedback as negative. It can be positive. You have to find opportunity for good feedback. You want to find people winning, but you do need to find opportunity for people to improve. You do have to be sensitive to the person you're providing the message to. Now, most people don't like to be criticized in public in front of their peers. Deadly mistake, as you probably can imagine. And even in jest, even in joking, some people will not take it well. Actually, most people won't. You'd be surprised. A lot of people don't even like public praise. They like it quietly. What's critical here, and especially for the newest generation, the millennial workforce, is they're looking for affirmation of doing the right things. Like I said earlier, catching people winning. What you want to do is you want to find as many opportunities that are genuine. You don't want to make stuff up and seem disingenuous. What you want to do is you want to find opportunity to find people winning, doing the right things. Generally all people want to know is, am I meeting my requirements? Am I achieving my goals? Am I exceeding my goals? And how do I get better? And that getting better part is best, that feedback is best coming from the manager, the line manager, and it has to be delivered in a positive and a positive way. It may come across as negative to some, but it has to be delivered the right way, and we'll share a little bit about that. But there's opportunities every single day in an interaction in every interaction to find opportunity to find people either winning or the opportunity for the critical feedback. Now, the critical feedback doesn't have to be delivered immediately. That could wait. But it could be as simple as after a meeting, just pulling an employee aside saying, hey, I just want to talk to you about what I saw happening here and the possible impact. And it's just giving them some quick feedback so that they can improve on the fly. There's also formal feedback, and these are the opportunities. The most common formal feedback is the annual employee appraisal. For those of you who have done many of these over the years, you're probably cringing saying, oh yes, they take too long, but they're extremely valuable to the employee. Make them short, make them sweet, make them meaningful, but it has to go beyond just the annual performance evaluation. It could be quarterly, it could be monthly, but the more formal feedback you can provide, the better. Now, I know it's not realistic to do it every week. That'd be unreasonable. But if you can find an opportunity to do it at least twice a year, very formally, and perhaps a monthly scheduled touch base, even if it's 15 minutes, just to provide the feedback, it's meaningful to the employee, and they're going to get a tremendous amount out of it because it is planned, it's purposeful, and what they're getting will address a number of things. It could be, there's really three categories for improvement. One of them is certainly a weakness. Now, a weakness does not have to become a strength. It could be a weakness that is subdued, minimized. Somebody might be naturally assertive, which is a strength, and a strength overused could also be a weakness. So if an individual is naturally assertive, they're going to be naturally assertive in most situations. But sometimes the naturally assertive people need to be quiet, listen. And as a manager, you might be able to give someone feedback that, hey, yes, it's a natural strength of yours. However, don't use it all the time. Use it when you need it or when it's going to be most beneficial. So it's a strength overused. That could be a weakness. It could be a pure weakness that needs to be minimized. It can also be something that's a strength that needs to be enhanced. That is an underlying strength that maybe is not being exploited fully. So these are the types of things that you want to think about. And the formal stuff is really more long-term. Many of the strengths, weaknesses that need to be addressed are habits that people have had for a long time, and they've got to adjust their habits. Hard to change a habit, but with consistent feedback and follow-up, that's when there's the best opportunity for somebody to change. Your goal as a manager, as a leader, as a coach, is to ensure that you have at least a mental, if not a written plan for each employee in terms of where you'd like to see them grow professionally. So what I'd like you to do on your worksheet, and this is item 3 because you've already got 1 and 2 done, I would like you to think about how this employee can benefit from improving in this area. And there's really a couple things to think about. And the reason why I want you to think about how they will benefit, because this will help them with their buy-in. If they see the value in it for them personally, then they're apt to be more engaged and motivated in improving in this area. So then, think about that, and then you might want to draw a parallel to the success in the organization. If someone makes an improvement, how does it benefit them? How does it benefit the organization? So let me give you about a minute or so, and you can jot down some thoughts, because as part of your dialogue and justification for a person working on this particular skill, this will help them, this will help you justify or at least bring them into the conversation and build that buy-in more quickly. Go ahead, fill out number 3. Maybe you want to just wrap that one up. We'll continue on here. Right. Now, as you go into these difficult or crucial conversations, you have to have a particular mindset. You want to set yourself up for success. You want to set the conversation up for success. You want to be sure the individual is not guarded. Some people are very good at accepting critical feedback. Some aren't, and many people are not. Part of this is a function of your relationship with them, which we'll talk about in a moment. But the first thing you got to think about before you even open your mouth, okay, I want you to think about, what is my goal? What is my intent here? Now, if you're upset with somebody, you're irritated with someone because of their performance, your intent might be to blast somebody or to light somebody up. I think what you need to think about is, wait a minute, what does my goal need to be here? What is my intention around sharing feedback with somebody? And ultimately, if you think about it, your intention is, I need this person to improve. My ultimate goal is for them to improve, to get better, to take full responsibility for themselves. They improve, the team improves, we get better outcomes, my job gets easier. So you have to come into a conversation, or prepare yourself for a conversation. Check your intent. What is your intention going into this conversation? 2, second bullet here, no hostility, no guilt. Very important. If you're in a bad mood, if you're genuinely upset with somebody, might not be a good idea to have the conversation at that point in time. Wait, pause. Some people say count to 10, whatever it is. Make sure your head is clear and you know what your intention is, and there's no hostility and there's no guilt. And the reason why no guilt is up here is for one particular reason. Most of the population, the majority of the population, feels guilty and doesn't like confronting people on poor performance. It's not comfortable, and this is, if your intent is clear, it's about helping them. That's what your goal is. There should be no guilt or hostility for helping somebody. So very important. Recognize that there are 2 perspectives. There are 2 perspectives. There is your perspective, and there is their perspective. Going into this, you want to have 2 ears and 1 mouth. You want to listen twice as much. Yes, you're going to be sharing. You're going to be describing what you're seeing, what you're hearing possibly. But it's important to hear people out, because someone's perspective comes from their world and what they see, and part of this is their expectations. As a leader, the questions I ask leaders when they're struggling: have you set the right expectation for this person? Do they have the appropriate support to succeed in this area? Do they have the right skills? Have you provided adequate training? Do they have the right belief system about themselves and the organization? Sometimes people aren't performing due to lack of confidence. You know who the confident people are around you, and you know who the ones who aren't as confident. So there are always 2 perspectives. It's important to prepare yourself to listen. Remember, it's listening is gaining information. Information is power. You learn about what's going on, then you have the power to help people or empower people. And the last part of this is make it safe. Going in knowing that I've got to make it safe. I don't want people to feel uncomfortable. I want them to feel as though they have a voice. And part of the first 3 bullets will get you there. And oftentimes making it safe is not inviting them into your office, into your workspace, or not even theirs, but to find a neutral location where you can have a conversation where everyone feels comfortable. And I think that's probably the best part. If you want the best outcome, that's the way to go. I did talk about making it safe, and a big chunk of this is showing respect. I won't read the bullets to you, but let's just talk about trust and respect for a minute. It's one of the biggest things in the world in terms of building relationships. The stronger your relationships are with people, the more effective you'll be at resolving situations. If somebody respects you and trusts you, essentially from the trust and respect you show them, their ears are going to be more willing, more open to hearing what you have to say. If your relationship with somebody isn't where it needs to be, it's going to be difficult. And I have had many of these conversations, probably weekly, with my clients on dealing with challenging employees or employees who aren't making the grade. And oftentimes what they've realized is they haven't built up a strong enough relationship. Now, what this is not about being friends with your employees. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about building a strong, trusting, and respectful relationship where almost any challenge can be overcome. Oops. Let's just talk about trust and what it's all about, and how, as leaders, and really as individuals and organizations, how we build trust and we tear it down. Now, what's really important, and this is why I always spend a few minutes on trust, because it's the fabric of every culture. It's the fabric of every leadership philosophy, and it sets the stage for building strong relationships that will allow you to enhance the skills and develop the employees to where you need them to be. There are four areas in how we build confidence in our relationships with others. One, we have to act from integrity, a set of guiding principles. We have to be competent in what we do, meaning we achieve our goals. There's a certain level of consistency that goes with that. And people see us as competent. That doesn't mean perfect. That just means we're competent. And then we do care about the needs of others, meaning it's not all about me. This works in two directions. Leaders need to perform this way as leaders, as well as individual contributors, and then your employees need to do this. How you build trust with people is through these three areas. So what I'd like you to do is I want you to, for item 4 on your worksheet, if you're going to present or address a challenge with one of these employees you listed in item 1 above, I want you to assess where you are in your relationship with them. You could keep it simple. I say, how strong is your relationship? You might want to say, how strong is your trust in your relationship with them? Grade yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 for each one of these and see how you're doing. Don't think so much about what they're doing. Think more about what you're doing, your actions, your behaviors. Go ahead. I'll give you about 30 seconds to fill that out. It shouldn't take you too long. Okay, hopefully you've been able to give yourself a grade in each of these areas. The interesting thing about trust, it's not something that you keep a tally on a piece of paper in terms of your level of trust with an individual, but it's a feeling, it's a sense. And if I asked you about your employees, I'd say, do you trust them? And without thinking about these three areas, you automatically have graded them over time in terms of their performance, how they've treated you. Well, they do the same thing. And trust is not something that grows or decreases quickly over time, unless there's something tragic. But it's typically small things that occur daily over the course of time that might degrade trust or build it up. If the trust is degraded, it's not going to change overnight. It's going to take a deliberate effort. The good thing about it, it only takes one side of the relationship to start that cycle in the right direction. The challenge is once it starts going the other way, it's a catch-22. If your trust is very low with an individual, you're always going to look for things that justifies the fact that you don't trust them, and that's dangerous. What we have to do is we have to put that aside, take the high road, and think about how can I build this relationship. And it does. It starts with one person, and the other person has a tendency to reciprocate. about 99% of the times. Does it happen all the time? No, human beings aren't perfect. But this is something you can certainly work on. So if you want to have the opportunity to improve an employee's skills, capabilities, and their performance, one of the first things you have to do is you have to think about, well, how strong is my relationship with this person? Are they going to take my advice? Are they going to take my critique well? If the trust is high, the answer is absolutely yes, because you've earned it. All right. Before I get into the how-to of how to have this conversation, the specifics, I want to talk about body language. Most of your interaction with people, or a lot of your interaction, unless you're a remote manager, is body language. It's verbal, it's tone, or it's nonverbal. The content, the 7% listed on the screen, those are the words. Those are the words that come out of your mouth. Those are the words that might be in an email. What's important to understand here is that most of what people get from you is through your actions, your body language, what you do. So when they say, do you walk the talk? Well, that's really crystal clear. Are you doing what you said you do? Do your actions match what you said? If you came up to somebody and gave them a compliment, but you had your arms crossed and a big scowl on your face, people are going to wonder that they're getting a mixed message. So the message, what people are perceiving, is mostly from, at least face-to-face, body language, your tone, and what they see happening rather than the words. And that's pretty indicative of most situations. So don't take my word for it. If you want to look this up, it's absolutely true. And if you think about high-profile politicians, they are trained in their body language. They are trained to stand a certain way, act a certain way. Now, many politicians these days don't care about that, but the ones that have perfected it understand that image, how they stand, how they portray themselves, is absolutely critical. That's a great example. Let's get into the during the conversation part. And these are some steps that you can follow, and they do work. Now, you don't have to follow them exactly in this order. There could be a little bit of iteration as you go through this. But think about these 5 things as you engage in a conversation around providing feedback. First thing, it is not about them as a person, meaning it's not a personal attack. It's about stating the facts on what you see happening. It could be something you actually saw happen. It could be performance that's measured. What you're doing is you're evaluating the performance and not the person as a human being. Now, you can get into some of their characteristics, but you want to relate it to the actual facts of the matter, and that is really, really critical in all this. Now, how someone's performing or how someone's acting, if it's not ideal or it's below that stability line, as I mentioned earlier, there are consequences for that, meaning consequences for an individual. If someone is overly aggressive and nasty in a meeting, the consequences are they're going to shut down the meeting, people are not going to want to work with that person, and it's going to have an impact on the team. I mean, those are sample consequences. Obviously, you're going to be confronting an individual, and you're going to do it hopefully with a smile on your face, because you're not angry and you're not going to be guilty. As I mentioned earlier, the idea here is talk to people about what you see happening, their outcome, their performance, and the consequences, and engage in a conversation. This is item 3. Invite and listen to comments. As I mentioned earlier, there are 2 perspectives, but this is not designed to be a top-down conversation to hammer someone over the head. This is a conversation to explore opportunities for growth. That's got to be your attitude. So this is what you see happening. Let's talk about consequences. How does this, how do we fix this? How do we repair this? Because this is where I need you to be. Now, what you might learn out of this is that there's something you haven't done. Going back to my model around, evaluating if someone's not performing, the skills, attitude, expectations, and support. Well, you may not have done everything you need to do, but that's why you need to invite, listen to comments. What you don't want to do in terms of listening to comments is allow people to deflect responsibility. If you've been clear, concise with what you expect, people should know what they are accountable to perform. You create an environment where people can thrive and grow, they'll hold themselves accountable. So you have to do a good job there. But like I said, do keep your eyes and ears open on all this and make sure you're reading their body language. 4 is establishing or reestablishing performance expectations. That's really asking them for a commitment on a certain level of performance. Be specific. Activity, people being busy, does not necessarily translate into results that you need. But so you have to be clear around expectations. What is the outcome we're looking for? What do we need? What does the result need to be? And it could be incremental results. We could have milestones and incremental results, but you got to be clear on what you want them to achieve, and you want their commitment. And on item 4, I say ask for their commitment to improve. It's okay to use the words, do I have your commitment on this? We really need it, or I really need it, or the team really needs it. Ask for that commitment. And if they can't give you a definitive yes, you know you may have a problem here. And by the way, that's the last resort. And all of this exercise is a goal to help people improve and grow. Most people will. There may be situations when someone can't or won't keep up, but we truly believe that most people have that capability. And then item 5 is as simple as that. You want to end on a positive note. If there are any specific follow-up, due dates, timelines, what you want to do is you want to schedule a follow-up on this. Don't let it say, okay, great, shake their hand and you're on your way. You want to make sure there's a clear follow-up on evaluating how they're doing. You're going to meet in 2 weeks. You're going to meet in 3 weeks. Schedule it. Put it on the calendar. They'll know what's going to happen. You know what's going to happen. And if you need to schedule another one, do it. But until that performance is where it needs to be, schedule some follow-ups. And ask them what support they need from you. Very important. And let them know that they have your support at any moment in time. So item 5 on the worksheet, we're getting close to the end of the hour here. I want to be sure we have a few more moments at the end. So what are those consequences for your employee, your team, and the organization? If you think about this area of performance you're going to address with the employee, well, what are those consequences? What are those things you need to talk about in item 2 here? Or at least try to draw out from the individual. What are the consequences for you, the team, the organization? Take a moment or two here and jot that down, and then we'll wrap up today's webinar. All right. Hopefully you have your worksheet completed. For those of you who have participated in our online webinars, well, that's redundant, our webinars, you'll know the reason why I have these worksheets. For those of you who haven't, this is a guide for you. This is something that you can take away from today, and you can apply it immediately after this call or at the appropriate time. The idea is, you're going to spend an hour in front of a computer.
Is now exiting.
You're going to spend a few hours. I just heard a noise. Sorry, I got distracted. You're going to spend time in front of the screen. You're going to be jotting a few things down. You're going to have your worksheet. The idea here is this: what am I going to do with this? Have I spent my hour effectively? And if you do something after this, you go after making an improvement after this, then you've spent your time wisely. If you have an impact on one other person, you've added a lot of value. If you can have an impact on more than one, think of how the exponential effect occurs here. So be sure you practice this when you leave. Just don't walk away saying, hey, that was great, because I'm sure that's what you're going to say, but also put it into action. Make sure that you're taking some time. And it's not extra work. It's just how you're going to conduct yourself a little differently. Before I go into any questions that might be there, I noticed I did not put a summary slide, which I usually do, and I might have deleted it by accident, but I think what's important here, just some of the highlights for you. Let's make sure that you have a plan in your organization for your employees. You know where you want to take them, and which means you need to know where they are. Where are they in their career? Where do they need to go? What are your aspirations for them? Now you might think, well, that's not for all of my employees. Yeah, but that's fine. What good and great leaders do is they look at situations, they look at their team, they look at their people and say, look, my job is not just to manage the organization, but it's to lead the people to greater levels of performance. So first of all, have a plan for the people in your organization. Make sure you have strong relationships. Now, I'll just validate again what a strong relationship is. It doesn't mean friends. It means you have a strong and trusting relationship with the people around you. They need to trust you. You need to trust them. There has to be respect. That is the foundation to do almost anything you want to do. You can overcome almost any challenge if the level of respect and trust is high. I mean, really almost any one. And you know who those people are in your lifetime, the people who you trust and respect most. You know you can overcome just about anything. And maybe you're going to say to yourself, no, anything at all. It doesn't matter what it is. And then, of course, as you go into your conversations, as you have a plan for people, you have to have the courage to speak up. You have to have the courage to address those key moments. You got to look for opportunity. So that what I'm getting at is you have to be intentional. You have to be purposeful and courageous in your leadership. And then as you think about how this individual is going to grow, make sure you follow up. This is not a one-time event. This is a process. It's a journey in making sure that the people around you are getting stronger, better, perform more effectively, which means your team does, which means you do. If you think about this, it's not about me. It's always about the individual. Well, guess what? At the end of the day, people will look at you and upon you as a very strong person, a very strong leader, and very capable. And that's really ultimately what we're trying to get at. Before we get into if there's any questions, I'm just going to mention we do have another webinar next month. We've stuck to webinars over the summer period because it's hard to get people out of the office. We will be following through with an event sometime in the fall. Stay tuned for those. Allison will send that out. But August 17th, 2 p.m., leading change successfully. One of the hardest things people go through is change. Most people don't like to change, so we're gonna help leaders figure out how that happens. So Allison, is there anything we can do here related to questions?
Yes, there is. So a couple questions here. How big of a factor is my patience in dealing with employees who are not performing well?
Well, if you don't want to kill them, I would say immense. It's very, very, very important. Your patience really comes from your perspective. If we set too high an expectation for people, we will lose our patience. So I think, part of it does start with you. Your patience level is oftentimes a function of how well you set expectations and how well you work on that relationship. And what I mean by work on the relationship, it's the trust as well as the time you put into it. So your patience are very important. Now, as human beings, we lose our patience sometimes. We know perfection is very difficult, so we're not expecting that, but we are expecting you to, as a leader, you are held to a higher standard. You need to take the high road. You need to be patient. Now, not to the point where it's ridiculous. If a particular employee it stays below that stability line forever, okay, never goes above that line, you might have a bigger issue. Patience is a function of progress and growth. If you've done everything you can, but they're not doing their part, well, it might be time to part ways. But that really is a last resort. But in all of it, I would say your patience is very, very critical and a key piece to making this work.
We have another question. How
Sure.
do you know when it is time to let an employee go if you feel things are not going to get better?
Well, I guess I touched on that a little bit. You know, the let me touch on the. Okay, I'm gonna come at this from the perspective. Have you done everything right? There are two basic reasons why an employee is not succeeding or even measuring up to the minimum level, and it's one of two things: they don't know how, or they don't want to. It's a willingness thing. If they don't want to, there's almost nothing you can do. The whole lead the horse to water deal. If they don't want to perform, if they don't want to be part of the organization, and they have no intentions of getting with the program, and I mean within reason, that might be the time. The other one's a little more challenging because do they know how? It's a willingness or capability thing. If they're not willing, there's not much you can do. If they're not capable, it goes back to those four things I mentioned. Have you set the effective expectations? Okay, and you really have to make sure your house is clean on this one. Have you done everything you possibly can? Have you been crystal clear on what success looks like for them? And that's number one. That's expectations. Two, support. Have they been given the support they need? Do they have the resources in the organization, the information they need, access to what they need? Have you been crystal clear on how they can get their hands on it? Skills. Oftentimes we'll throw people in the deep end and say, you got to swim. Some will, some won't. The majority don't. They struggle. We want to be sure if we're going to challenge somebody, which we need to, that they have the skills, hard skills and soft skills. Sometimes people who are, I was told a story recently about a high-level exec had to do a presentation in front of a group, failed miserably, and they wondered, how did a high-level executive get to this level? And he really never had to do a presentation, and they were amazed. A presentation in front of a very large group, and I'm talking about thousands of people. We have to equip people with the skills, and when it comes to public speaking, there's a lot of factors that go into that particular example, but you know what I'm getting at there. And then the last one is attitude, and that is a function of the individual mostly, but attitude is a function of behavior. Do they have the right, beliefs? Do they have the right beliefs about themselves? Do they have the right beliefs about the business, the culture? And sometimes people's beliefs are self-limiting. So when it comes down to capability, those are the four areas you really have to think about. If you have absolutely explored every avenue in those four areas, and you truly believe you've exhausted every possibility, then my sense is that person would be on a short rope. But I default to people have capability, people have skills, people have willingness. I default there first. You got to give people the benefit of the doubt. Let them prove you wrong. So how long? 3 hours, 3 days, 3 months, 3 years. It's going to depend on the individual and how well they respond to meeting your expectations. But you can't do it forever. I mean, if you think about letting someone perform poorly for 3 months, how detrimental that can be to the organization. It's a function of the situation and where your organization is. Long answer, but hopefully that helps. Anything else, Allison?
Nope, I think we are just about out of time for today.
Perfect. Well, hey, thank you, everybody. Wonderful. Sorry for the glitches in the beginning. We've been changing technology recently. We'll get this squared away. It did work out. Hopefully you can join us in August. And stay tuned for our in-person, our webinar we're going to do live. And I'll be your speaker. We'll have some great things going on coming this fall. Thank you very much. Have yourself a great day.